democracy, and nationalism. Today, we're diving into a fiercely impartial sociological look at a complex movement that is actively reshaping our modern political landscape by merging religious identity with sheer political power. We have to ask a really tough question. How exactly should a free society respond when a religious political movement seeks governmental power to impose its own beliefs and restrict the rights of others? It is absolutely critical that we figure this out. To do that, we're going to lean on the data, the history, and the constitutional framework supplied by our sources. Here's our roadmap. We're going to define the ideology, compare it with traditional faith, dig into the demographics, examine some global parallels, explore the theological vanguard, and finally map out the democratic boundary. Let's get to it. Defining the ideology. Defining the ideology and the deep story of American identity. To grasp the impact of this movement, we have to strip away our assumptions and look at the academic consensus. Scholars emphasize that we are not merely talking about personal theology. According to sociologists such as Andrew Whitehead and Samuel Perry, Christian nationalism is actually an ethnopolitical ideology. It is a movement seeking to institutionalize traditionalist values from the top down. It argues that the nation has always been and should always remain distinctively Christian in its identity, its sacred symbols, and its public policies. Ultimately, it is about using the apparatus of the state to protect a very specific cultural hegemony. At the heart of this ideology is something sociologists call the deep story. Think of it as a mythological script. It has clear heroes and clear villains, and it feels completely true to its adherents even when it directly contradicts established historical facts. Sociologists Philip Gorski and Samuel Perry point out that this deep story claims the United States was explicitly founded as a Christian nation by white, traditional Christians, and that its global success is literal proof of divine favor. But here's the catch. This story relies heavily on the belief that these blessings are under constant threat from outsiders. It creates an intense, high-stakes narrative of a righteous us against an undeserving them. Faith versus political ideology. Drawing the line. To understand the sociology here, we absolutely have to separate private, deeply held religious faith from a structured political movement. Conflating the two is a very common mistake, and it clouds our understanding of the data. On one side, we have Orthodox Christianity and private faith, a global, universal religion functioning within a democratic society. Traditional religious conservatives participate by relying on lawful persuasion within a pluralistic public square. They advocate for their values just like anybody else. On the other side, we have Christian nationalism. This operates primarily as an ethnopolitical identity. Instead of persuasion, it seeks a coercive social order and attempts to use government power to enforce cultural dominance, often restricting the rights of people who do not fit that identity. Demographics and authority. Let's look at the sociological data. You might be wondering who actually adheres to this ideology in the United States. Survey data reveals that roughly 21% of Americans fall into the category of Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers. This means that the vast majority, nearly 80% of the country, are either skeptics or complete rejectors of the ideology. It is a minority movement, but as the sociological data shows, it is a highly organized and ideologically motivated one. Here's a striking fact from the survey data. Only about half of these nationalist adherents are active church-goers. For many, Christian nationalism functions more as a cultural identity marker than as a practiced religion. What else does the data tell us about what these adherents believe? Researchers note a heavy correlation with exclusionary social attitudes among the white majority. These beliefs function as powerful predictors of support for preserving racial and gender hierarchies. We see strong ties to protecting patriarchal family structures and something called group-serving pronatalism, which is the belief that the dominant group must have more children to preserve its demographic dominance. Furthermore, these adherents score exceptionally high on right-wing authoritarian scales. They show deep skepticism toward pluralistic democracy and a strong preference for centralized authority that can bypass democratic norms to enforce order. A global playbook, worldwide parallels. It is important to realize that this is a transnational phenomenon. Leaders in the United States, India, Hungary, and Russia are all utilizing a similar illiberal playbook. Academic research demonstrates that religious nationalism functions as a global script. In India, Hindutva frames the nation as an inherently Hindu civilization, using citizenship laws to exclude minorities. In Hungary, Viktor Orban uses illiberal Christian democracy to legitimize constitutional bans on secular liberalism. In Russia, Vladimir Putin and the Moscow Patriarchate partner under the banner of Ruski Mir, using the defense of traditional orthodoxy to justify authoritarianism and even military expansion. All over the globe, exclusionary nationalism is being dressed in the familiar, socially acceptable garb of religion. Dominionism and violence, the theological vanguard. While Christian nationalism can be a diffuse cultural feeling for some people, its political vanguard is driven by a specific hard-line theology called Dominionism. Dominionists argue that Christians are literally mandated by God to rule over the earth, including every sphere of society, law, and government. They believe the United States Constitution should be subordinate to biblical law, and that secularism must be entirely defeated to establish this divine blueprint for society. The primary engine pushing this forward right now is the New Apostolic Reformation, or NAR. It is a fast-growing network of charismatic churches led by self-proclaimed apostles. Academic research highlights the movement's intense focus on spiritual warfare. This is a form of paranoid politics in which political opponents are not merely people with whom you disagree about tax policy. They are viewed as literal demons. They preach that the government has been captured by people handpicked by Satan, framing ordinary democratic elections and public policy debates as literal life or death battles between absolute good and absolute evil. When political opponents are viewed as literal demons, the sociological data becomes alarming. According to PRRI data, a full 30% of Christian nationalist adherents agree that because things have gotten so far off track, true American patriots may have to resort to violence to save the country. That is a massive contrast with the general public. When a political movement becomes intertwined with apocalyptic rhetoric and a conquest narrative, violence stops being taboo. Supporters can begin to see it as a righteous and justified means of defending freedom and restoring order. This volatile mixture of apocalyptic rhetoric and political grievance is not merely theoretical. It physically erupted during the January 6th insurrection. That day showed us exactly why this matters so much in a sociological context. As sociologists Gorski and Perry noted, the Capitol riot was a bizarre riot of seemingly contradictory images. A wooden cross stood next to a wooden gallows. Jesus Saves banners flew alongside "Don't Tread on Me" flags. Adherents were literally praying for God's help while simultaneously attacking the seat of government. It placed the undeniable links between this ideology, election denialism, and political violence on full display. The democratic boundary, protecting a free society. How does a free society respond to this without infringing on genuine religious liberty? We can map out a very clear boundary. Steps 1 and 2 involve holding private religious beliefs and engaging in lawful democratic advocacy. Those activities are fundamentally protected by the First Amendment. You have the right to your faith and the right to vote according to your conscience. The democratic boundary is crossed at step 3, when a movement attempts to use the power of government to impose its specific religious beliefs on everyone else through discriminatory policies. The social contract is completely broken at step 4, when the movement crosses into criminal intimidation, the use of armed militias, and political violence intended to bypass democracy altogether. Ultimately, a pluralistic democracy requires that no single religious group be permitted to command the master levers of the state and use them to dominate its neighbors. I want to leave you with this prophetic model from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Chew on this. The church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state. As this nationalist movement continues to grow both globally and domestically, we have a profound question to answer. Will faith be used to expand human dignity and equality in our democracy, or will it be weaponized to dominate and exclude? Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for watching. Remember, you are worth the time it takes to slow down, listen within, and care for yourself. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more mindful insights. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself.